Okay, and welcome to the July IrisBG webinar 2019, hosted by Havard from IrisBG and Greg Payton from the Dawes Arboretum. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, we have so this is it should have been the 4th of July, but we realized that a lot of people would be doing other things, so we moved it 1 month or 1 week, sorry, forward. So that will be just a standard thing now. If there is a holiday in North America typically, or any other sort of important dates that crash with our webinar, we'll just move it 1 week. You will find that on the webinar page if you're uncertain. Okay,
Great.
So today we have received a number of questions. So there's no particular kind of topic in general. We just have a number of interesting questions coming in that we will discuss. And there was one on that general note. There was one. Now we have quite a number of recordings of these webinars, and somebody asked if we could index them, and I think that's a great idea if we had some sort of cataloging thing. But I wish I had the time to do it. And if somebody has a volunteer, we can look at how we can deal with that. So yeah, that would be very helpful for everybody, I'm sure. So yeah, we try to put in on YouTube what topics that are discussed, but it's far too. It's not systematic enough, and since we're surrounded by record keepers, I know that a lot of you see a potential to improve that. So,
Is there any way to post the questions and use that as an index?
Yeah, we could put those questions in there. They often come in different forms. They come with an email or in all kinds of different from different sources. So. But it's more a question about the old recordings where people, there's recordings going back a couple of years. So it's, it's a challenge. But we understand. What I was trying to say, I suppose, is I understand that would be nice, and hopefully we can do something about it. Okay. Then we'll jump into the first question of the day. That was from Polly, I believe, to get the location coordinate center points into IrisBG. What we're talking about here is, for those of you who are not familiar with Iris too much, that when you have your locations down here, you can also assign a center point for the location. The benefit of that is that you don't have to, so all the plants that are then assigned to that particular location will be displayed with that location point if they don't have a specific location coordinate attached to that plant. So that's a great, that's very useful. And I think what Polly said, which is really nice. So this is a very good example of where Iris stop and where other software might take over. As you see with this particular recording here, or this map here, we have a Google satellite map, but you can have, of course, a different type of map. You can have an ArcGIS map like you see here. And so in Iris, there's no way to draw these maps, to design the base map and the different layers, etc. And that's when you then use a tool like ArcGIS. And if you then have designed all your beds in ArcGIS, you can also then convert those beds into set points. So it will calculate the center point, and that point would then be handy to get back to Iris here. Obviously, you can type it in, but also in version 4, you can also update this data through the data import. So that's a bit fiddly, but you can do it. So just by including the way that if I'm just bringing up an Excel sheet to just show people how the basic layout would be. Just a sort of a blank workbook here. So this is will slide over. So initially, when people use data import, they it's typically used for adding new records, but you can also update existing records. And then when you do that, you will have to sort of put a column called action to say that you want to do something other than adding records. So then you say you want to update the area, and then you typically say location code, and let's say I wanted to update the center point of nursery 1 here, so I would do NU1, and then I would also have to put in location chord X and location chord Y. So this is the basic model of how to do it. I would like to sort of come with a small, there might be more to it. I haven't tested this on the locations, but that's the basic principle. You basically have to tell you which location you want to update, and then the coordinates, whatever that is. And then you should be able to insert this through the data import. But that's version 4.1. If you have 364, you need to upgrade to this version. So, yeah.
Okay. I have a question. Do you have to reverse, since it's Esri is reversed from IrisBG, do you have to reverse the X and Y coordinates?
Yeah, there's a difference between. If you instead to make it easier for you, you could do X chord lat and long like that. Okay. So yeah, I know Esri and Iris has X and Y is opposite, which is not very helpful. Yeah. And people ask, can we change that? That's also a bit tricky because that will rattle a number of other people who've used to the other model. So unfortunately, yeah. But that's if you use lat and long, then it's a bit easier to comprehend what's coming in anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then second question from. Not sure. It might be Polly as well. That doesn't matter. So, custom attributes. Can custom attributes be item-based? And the short answer is no. I'm just going to mute somebody in the background here who seems to. There's a bit of extra noise here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was better. Thank you. Attributes, custom attributes, custom attributes are custom fields that you find here under definitions, and they can be referred to or related to taxa or to accessions. So if I say here I want to have a custom attribute for accession called price, for example, and then I set decimal. So, and that's the two types of custom fields you have. So if you want to have custom information or details related to items, the best approach, there are sort of two ways to deal with it. One is to look at the record themselves. So I'm looking at the planting here. A lot of gardens use location ref and location subref for the information that is plant specific, that might be also unique to their garden, that is sort of similar to a custom attribute, you could say. There is, you could argue that you might use some of the other fields there as well, but like external ref and etc. The other approach depends a bit on what type of information you are recording, but you can also use tasks to create a list of plants. That's an old workaround that will give you a similar effect. I don't know if you have a good example, Greg.
Well, we were talking about Smith and their collection-based how they can have one accession with maybe 2 or 3 items, and the items could be in different collections.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so let's say an education collection, for example. So if I do that, I can go in here and say create a task, clear the screen, and hopefully I can spell like this. Yeah, dyslexic. Here we go. And then you add all those plants that are part of this collection. I'm just going to, search for any plant with A in it. Just to pick some. Yeah, exactly. It's not good. But anyway, well, just picking a few that are alive. So, like this. So this is my education.
What about if you, as you're creating accessions, assigning this? How would you go about it then? Yeah.
So let's first take how this works in practice when you have this as an approach. If you're working on the accession and want to find all the plants that are part of the education collection, you can do that going through advanced search and through here saying, give me all the plants in the education collection. And then you get all the accessions, and then you have to look through. This one is part of that. How do you see that? You will see that under the reference tab. So that's where all the tasks will be linked up. And to your question, what if you're now recording a new accession and want to add it to this particular collection with this approach? So let's say I'm recording a new accession here. It's a Quercus. Oops, sorry. I seem to be, let's see, Amar. It doesn't matter. We do it. And then I'm just going to put in the supplier here, and then provenance garden. Okay, and then we're putting in the planting, and we're putting it in that part of the garden and planted today. So I'm just a bit not very important this part. And then what you can do is if you just copy this, and then you go back to your task. I have this in here now, but of course you will then pull this up, and then I could just paste in that accession number or with qualifier, and now it's added to the list.
Okay.
And you could say, you can even write something here like, if you want to. Mm-hmm. So it's a sort of a workaround for sure, but it will it would give you similar capabilities than the custom attribute, but it's a bit it's different for sure.
But the tasks themselves are very useful because you can do a lot of different types of maps and reports and things that are just based on tasks, and then using the task wizard, you could create new tasks where they overlap or don't intersect or different things like that.
Okay.
You mentioned the task wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a function I've not really spotted. I'm just spotting it now. Can you kind of elaborate on that here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let's see. I'm just going to make my screen toolbar a bit bigger so everybody can see my buttons. Yes, the task wizard is its origin stems from a user conference a few years back where one institution mentioned that they had created a list of all the taxa they wanted to have in a systematic garden. So they had one task with all their taxa, and then they wanted to figure out whatever they had in the garden, what was missing. And that's how this particular feature has its sort of inspiration. And the point with the wizard is that you can use this to create a new task based on existing tasks. So you can merge and split, etc. So if I bring it up, it becomes hopefully a bit clearer. It's super geeky, but it's really useful when you need it. So And another, so merging, if you have, it can be very useful, especially for those. Let's say a scenario here. I have the education collection, okay, and then we have another collection here. I'm going to make another one. We call it, cooking,
conservation,
observation. Okay, observation collection. So we'll do that. And then we go in here, and then I'm just going to, again, take all the plants with B in the name, which is very sort of, I might get some plants several times, but that's fine. I mean, so I'm just like, okay, so here we go. Here's our observation collection. Okay, and then I want to then suddenly see, I want to create a new list with both of these collections, all the plants in both of these. That's when the wizard can come in. And then I can say observation and education. And maybe I just want, instead of plants, I just want taxa. So I could create a new list, but then of a different type as well. So I will then say, here's my education, and here's my observation. And then I'm going to merge them. So I get all the taxa that are listed in both of these collections.
Okay, thank you for that. I hadn't spotted that. I don't know whether you've mentioned it before, but it's fun.
No, I don't know. Yeah, we may mention it, but I mean, it's sort of one of those things that it's a bit like when you have a car and you had it for 6 years and you're going to sell it, and then you found, what's this button? So, it's the air conditioning. Sorry. That was a bad joke, but anyway, you get my point. So if I do this now, I got a new one. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it failed for some reason. Why is that? Well, that's more of a mystery that we'll leave for another day. I'm not sure about that. Why that was.
It's worked for me in the past, so I don't know what the situation is with that database.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, I'm not going to speculate on that just now, but you get the point anyway. So, yep.
It's supposed to work.
It's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Correct.
Can I throw in yet another task-related question here?
Yes, sure.
Is there a way of getting a list of all the tasks? We've ended up with a lot of tasks made by various different people. I really need to go through them, and it'd be really nice to be able to get a report of the tasks so I can work out whose is whose and which one needs cleaning up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the easiest way to do that is that there's the print list thing, which is not necessarily just to print things. So when you have the search results, you can also, that's generally in Iris, that you can actually use this to export the data to a spreadsheet, for example. So when you get to this point, you can see here now I can export this whole list to an Excel sheet or CSV, text file, etc.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yep. So that's a very good question. That's a reminder to everybody, really. It's sort of it should be export list maybe instead, but this particular capability you'll find anywhere. If I have here all these accessions, I can do the same here, and then export it, or even send it by email to somebody if you want to. Or share it on Facebook. No, that doesn't work. But anyway, Twitter feed. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So another question here is on the asset form. What kind of information goes into type, and how you do? Oh, yes, that's also a very good question that comes up at regular intervals. For those of you who are not familiar with assets, they are found under management. And this is used to record non-plant stuff. And normally, it makes those who use it a lot are typically institutions who have the Garden Explorer website. to put their collection online, because then they can also include benches, artwork, etc. And yeah, that's basically it. And they can be part of a tour as well. So when you make a tour down here, that can also go online. If I bring up an example here, you see here we have one that has a ending point. You want to attract all the customers or visitors to end up at the cafe. So so that sort of tour goes like that. So it's a combination of plants and assets. Okay, so going back to the question, when I then record assets, you will have this particular drop-down list here, type, and you see, obviously, if you have a fresh system, that list might be empty, and that is, of course, something you want to deal with. Where do I manage that? It's managed under definitions, and unfortunately not very intuitive. It's called location types. And all the, so a location types is a bit of a hybrid thing because it deals with assets and locations. They are sort of, they are cousins in the data set here. So all the location types that are survey points, no, sorry, that are collection, they will end up in the collection screen, in the location screen. So if you want to, if I go to the location here, just to show you that, you see here we have the survey point, and then you can have other things that you categorize all your locations for. And all the ones that are info point, feature, and miscellaneous, they will be available in the asset screen. And so if you then put in a bench, for example, then you can also find a nice symbol for the bench. There's only one that makes sense, which is called bench, but that's so you can play around with that as well. Yep. A top tip here is obviously if you have a lot of benches, you can then start giving these benches some sort of accession number kind of thing, so you can find them.
Right, which is what we've done. Yeah, we have a category called bench, and then underneath of it we'll have like bench 001, bench 002, something like that.
Yep.
Okay, I don't have location types under definitions. Is that something?
Oh, that might be an access control question. So
yes.
under definitions, and so you don't see this particular option, location types.
No.
Okay, then it's
no wonder I was struggling to find it.
Right.
that's yeah. So
that's an access permission
yeah.
issue. Okay, thank you.
Right. If you log back, if you logged in as admin, you could add that to your profile so that you could view that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another great question: is adding memorial to accession detail purpose and putting the memorial text in items material content a good solution for accessioning, I suppose, item-based memorial data in for our website? Okay, yeah, that's how to deal with memorial information, or yeah. The normally, or in many cases, I would think that the actual text, the memorial text, because some gardens, I suppose. I don't know about you, Greg. Maybe you could tell us how you're doing this.
Well, we've always used fundings. I can hear myself echoing in somebody's speakers, so if they wouldn't mind muting themselves, it makes it easier to talk. Thank you. We've always used fundings to store it because we consider the legacy to be a donation of money to the system, to the Arboretum, and that way you can add different sorts of entries. You can add items. I'm also hearing myself again in somebody else's speaker. But you can add assets like benches, and you can add multiple items to the same donation. So, say for example, Mrs. Smith gives us some money to label an oak tree, and we have the oak tree listed, a particular item on there, and Mrs. Smith, and then say that particular tree, we have a guarantee period of 10 years where the tree will stay labeled no matter what. And if the tree dies in that period of time, we will contact her via the contact screen there, find her phone number, email, contact her, and say that tree is perished, let's pick out a new tree. So we then get her back in and find the new tree. So I can mark the first item there instead of completed after it's been done. That's before it's labeled. Then once it's labeled, I mark it as completed. And then that particular tree dies, I can add a new item to that list and mark the original one as excluded. So it shows the history of what plants were the legacy to Mrs. Smith and what the current plant is. And if she donates to have a bench and a tree labeled, we can add the bench as well to that list. And that just sort of keeps the full history of the plants labeled and what sorts of assets or plants were donated for.
And how do you start, Greg? Do you start by making legacy items? I mean, how do you make a legacy code and code list?
Yeah, well, right in there, you see under type, you can add that under code lists, the different sorts of things that might be in there. So we have different styles of whether it's in honor of someone, whether it's in the memory of someone, whether it's a bench that's in honor, a bench that's in memory. So you can add whatever categories you want to specify within that.
And where do you put the type information? How do you start that?
He's clicking on it there under the code lists, and it's going to be under funding type, I think it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, he just has to save it here before he gets there. Code lists, yeah, there you go. Funding type, right there.
Okay.
And a tip here: if you don't find funding type here, then you can
you can create it.
Yeah, it's already there. You just have to create the first one by clicking here, add it, and then when you add it, you select funding type from the list of different code lists.
Because if the code list exists but has no data associated with it yet, it's not going to be in that list. It's going to be in code list types that's right above it.
Yeah. I didn't explain that really well, but if you don't find it, you just click plus and then you just say funding type by selecting it like this, funding type, and then you can record it. Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
and that has to be started in code list types.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well,
yeah.
No.
Well, the built-in
it's already
ones,
there.
Yeah, the built-in ones are all in there. But if you create a custom attribute, like say you wanted some sort of a phenology or some other sort of a list of items to be in a custom attribute, you can go into code list types and create your own category, and then populate it under code lists, and then link that to your custom attribute to have a drop-down of items that you can choose from the list.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time visualizing that, how that's all connected.
Yeah, he's got my list up there with all the different categories that we used. So we have different kinds of benches. We have swinging benches and regular benches, but I've not specified out whether the swinging bench is in memory or in honor, just because I've not had that need yet, but I could add categories to that and specify, because right now we only have swinging benches in the memory, but if we had some in honor, I could specify. But if I needed to report on it, then I can pull those out. So what you need to report on and what you need to filter on, if you need to do a report to your supervisor yearly about how many of different sorts of things you were donated for, and you need to search for them, then you can create this category so that you can separate them out.
Right, it's creating the category that I'm a little foggy on.
Right, so just under
code list.
Code list funding type, yeah.
Yeah.
To clarify this part, there are quite a number of drop-downs that are just consist of a code and a name and text, like what we talked about now, the funding type. So that's very very basic way to categorize data, but just a code and a name and nothing more.
Okay.
And then there are some codes, drop-downs that are a bit more complex that contain some sort of logic, like plant status. They are separate. So like here you got plants where you also can then record more information beyond the code and the name. So that's basically it. So when you look for...
So funding type is actually the type drop-down in the funding form.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, I think I...
and if you see on the code list, there's also something called inspection type. And all the inspection, if you're dealing with inspections and the drop-downs in this screen, if I just bring up an example here, then all these drop-downs are also available then in code lists, some of them at least. And then you will find them under inspect age, class, condition, etc. So there's a lot of stuff here going on, obviously, but hopefully you are able to find it.
But basically, code lists are where you create the drop-downs for the other form.
The majority of the drop-downs are there.
Yeah, think of it as just the storage of what most of your boxes that have set lists is stored in. There's a few that you can't change, but the vast majority you can alter what they say under code lists. And then the other types of drop-downs are like the list that if you type it in the first time, it will always be there. So it just builds up like the distinct values.
Okay.
So you type it in one time, and it's always in the box for the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I add to the...
Can you rearrange things alphabetically as you type them? If
you can set the list to be... There's a sort level under there. So if you see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can put them in the order that you want them to appear.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't do anything, it will be in the alphabetic.
I see. Okay. Default is alphabetic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So if you set them all to 0, they will sort alphabetically.
Okay.
Pete, you had a question?
No, I was just going to add in that regarding things like memorial trees, we haven't been using the funding section of the database mainly for historic reasons. I'll probably look at it. But what we've just done is we just use a task with all our memorial trees on it, and then we use the comments field to help generate labels with the right name on it.
Mm-hmm. The benefits of fundings, though, is you can add assets and even notes. So if you go back to fundings, Havard, click on fundings, we have and add a new item to the list there. Now add note, or note. So if we have something called a tree planting fund, where people will donate some money just to add to the coffers to buy trees for reforestation purposes. And that doesn't link to any one particular plant or an asset. So you can just add the note item and then type in, tree fund under code name. And then it just stores that they donated to that particular fund. But if you put it under code name, there you have to put in, you just type in tree fund or something like that.
Yeah.
And then save that. But that just adds, it's not tied to any particular accession. It's just like a freewheeling field. You can add whatever you want in there.
Right.
Yeah, so you keep...
That looks useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You keep track of anybody who has provided or funded the Arboretum, but you, in this case, they gave you $5,000, but you didn't associate it with any specific tree. Mm-hmm. And then those two will not be listed in this particular case. Yeah.
Or you could split it out. They give you a total of 5,000. You could say it's 3,000 for the tree fund, 1,000 for each of the two items.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So. something like that. Yep.
Yeah. Great. Well, that one is dead and stuff. Okay, well you get it. Okay, cool. And I think what the other point that you had, Greg, is that obviously Mrs. Smith will be a contact, so that you can get in touch with her when the tree is dead or something. Yeah.
Correct. And I set the status of all the private individuals to protected. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, this new version leaves a big blank. There's the tags down there. You have to drag that up each time. So if you could fix that. But if you add, I have a tag called like legacy donor. And I can just search for all the people that have donated to the legacy fund and report on those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So hold on. I'm just gonna okay that and just undo that, delete that, and then save it. And then do this, and then I'm going to add this, so we get a lot of overdose of managing your drop-downs. So we go back to code lists, go to, is it donor type? No, it's the contact type, isn't it? Here we go.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we'll add value 5. Donor. Like that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go back to my funding story and go open the contact, refresh this one, and get it in, and then we have the possibility to do legacy donor. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Wow, this is quite a story, this. Yeah. Okay. But one thing you didn't say, Greg, was where do you write the actual memorial text? You put it here.
Honestly, yeah, I put it under comments under each item.
Okay.
So where you have the dollar figure. So in that situation, if I had the text of, but I mean, if it's the dead one, I just move the text up into the current live one. I don't keep a copy of the text in the dead ones as well. I just keep the current live item with the,
And that's where we could place stuff that would be published to the web?
Well, the scenario, this scenario is this does not get published to the web, and that's fine with us because we don't really want to have to go to contact our thousands of legacy donors and say, is it all right if we put your name on the internet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because some people don't want to be published like that on the internet. They might be private people who, don't want their name out there other than just on a label on a tree at the Arboretum where you have to walk up to see it.
Right, but say that you do publish it, where would be a good place then to put
you would have to create assets for each of those and then add them as assets because you can publish the assets like the benches get published. So we tell people that when they purchase a bench that it will be, you can search for it on our website. Since there are fewer benches and we can manage those faster than having thousands of legacy donors set up or trees set up as assets. So if you go to features and you search for bench and just click search, you'll see, if you zoom in, you'll see all these benches. And you can add photographs to each of the benches too. So you can have a picture of the bench, or like that one. Ta-da! And it has the text up there in a memory of Betty Gunderson 2008. Now that one doesn't have a photo, but Carl and Hazel McAllister.
Yeah, so you're doing it's a bit of double bookkeeping here, but on the other hand, you're then full control over what this is sort of not very controversial data that you publish. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
An old style bench there, 1978. So.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to get some photos of some benches. I have to put that on my work list.
Well, you need to paint them first, I think. So.
Well, that's teak. They're supposed to be natural.
I'm just joking. Okay. Great. Or Greg, that's excellent. Let's. Did we now complete this story about the funding questions? Are you pleased, or are you?
Well, one thing I would add is where you have date start and end. Since I said that we guarantee the trees for a period of 10 years, when the donation is made, I go ahead and add 10 years into the future as to when it ends. So if it's 2016, I'll put 2026 as the ending date. And then I know that if the tree is past 10 years and it dies, all I have to do is send them a note informing them that their tree has perished, and if they wish to donate for a new tree, they may do so. But we also keep a plaque in our visitor center of every year all the tree donations that are made gets engraved on a plaque, so their name will always be on display in our visitor center, just not necessarily on the tree if it's gone after 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Then I think the story of that was very informative. Thank you very much, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another question. Let's see if there's some question coming in from the notes. No, there were the other. So, what is the best solution for item-based collection policy codes? We're thinking of using the field accession detail material purpose for putting our full collection policy names associated with an accession, and then placing the collection policy codes specific to each item in the accession under item material content. Is that a good solution?
I honestly didn't understand that question at all when I read it. So.
No, it was so. Could you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, I gave you that question. If you were to go to the accessions form,
yep,
and go to details, and then under material, there is the purpose column, and it's a drop down.
Yeah.
And presently, in that field, we have our old collection policy codes.
Yep.
An extra, we have things like why did we buy this plant?
Mm-hmm.
We bought it for conservation. We bought it for education. Those are our collection policy codes.
Yeah, we do that
thinking,
like reforestation or plant sale or something like that. Yeah.
Right. So this is where all of our BG-based collection policy codes migrated to, and now our whole collection policy has changed with a new director. So we have new collection policy codes that have to be put in with as each thing is accessioned.
Mm-hmm.
But then specific, say we have 6 items with one accession, and we have 3 purposes for the accession in all, or 3 collection policy codes that we've associated with this accession. Then if we want to specify what each item has been designated for,
they would have to be under the items tab.
Then you would go to under the items tab. So if we switch over to items, and then I was wondering if we could put it under material
content,
comment, or comment.
Or down here.
Yeah. Just as a way of saying, well, this particular item is for education, while another one might be for conservation.
I would give the advice to put it maybe something like under content or something rather than comments, because I tend to use comments for things that happen to that plant. Like when the plant dies, I'll use that field to put in the cause of death, if known, like disease or insect-related information about that. So I just consider that to be more free text, and each time you add history to one of your items, you can have different comments under it. So you could say tree on one date, you could say tree, badly fed upon by a certain insect, and then the next time you looked at it, you could say tree recovering from insect damage. So it's just like a running list of what's happened to that plant at that time, whereas the content can stay the same for each update.
And within content, we could also like assign more than one collection policy code, correct?
This is just free text here, so yeah.
I mean, you could just type in, like with a semicolon between the codes or something, if you just wanted to list different codes. Yeah.
And then could you search on that?
That is not a searchable field.
Let's have a look if it's available in advanced search. That I'm not sure of.
Kind of feeling that the issue here is that the purpose field on details really needs to be some form of multi-value, because I've come across this where we have material which has got more than one value. So you always have to compromise.
Well, but it is. It is also. So if I bring up an accession here, and here we got plant sale rock garden, and you have plant sale rock garden. If you formalize it the way you record these, then you can search. Then you can find these records regardless. If I now do rock garden,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just ensure that they're listed alphabetically so that you don't have to enter it reversed.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So it sort of works, but I mean, if you have like 20 different ones, and then it starts to become messy, and then maybe a custom attribute is better. But back to Polly's story here as well. Is it important to identify the individuals about their purpose?
It is for our director. Yeah.
Yeah, because then we might go back to that question about collections and using custom attributes. That might be easier to deal with than fiddling in fields that are not designed for that sort of.
But that's why I asked if custom attributes can be item-based, because this is trying to get the collection policy down to the item.
Yeah. Again, back to the same story. You could do it with another task list, but that's just creating a lot of lists of tasks. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum there. Yeah. Going back to what I said initially about custom attributes, some people use these location reference subref for this type of purpose as well, to categorize your plants in a specific order or way. There might
how do
be
you
more
search on that?
They are searchable in any way you like. So if I had a rock garden here, then that would be searchable. If I now clear the screen and type in rock here, I will find all the records that have rock in it. And it's only one, obviously, now, but so those are,
And that's based on each
item. On more than one attribute?
Well, you then again need to do this kind of rock, scissor, whatever. Paper.
Well, rock, paper, scissors. No, I think, since this is per item, I doubt you have one item that has two purposes for it, though, right? If you have
that might happen.
Okay.
Okay. Everything seems to be open here. Yeah. Well,
but
then
you need to create another item row and have some items for rock garden, some items for plant sale, some items for whatever other purpose. You could just have different items listed.
Well, she said that one item might have several purposes. So then you need to do something like this, where you just type in a comma in between. But I think, anyway, this field is more, if you don't use this for anything else, it's a more suitable field than content. That's for sure.
Because it's searchable.
Searchable, and it's also content has it does give you some, indication that it's related to the type of plant material you're dealing with. This is more sort of abstract and more useful in that respect.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, I see time is zooming along, so maybe we should go to the next topic, and hopefully that's got some interesting answers or ideas at least on how to deal with it. Question: how to import Esri maps into IrisBG. The way Iris, just to be clear on how Iris and mapping works, what you record in Iris is the coordinates of your plants here. You can basically bring up the map, and one simple method is to drag it up, and then you have the coordinates. But you see, when I bring up the map itself, that is loaded from somewhere to be displayed in Iris, and that's when the question about Esri maps, how do I get an Esri map in here? That's one question. So if I pull up this is a map designed in ArcGIS, and you see these tiles are coming. They're fetched from what is called the WMS or Web Map Service. So it's loading these tiles from a place, but the coordinate is kept in Iris. So if you have an ArcGIS map, you then would, in this case, bring up the map from this ArcGIS server or whatever you have, and then display the plant markers on top of that.
So if it's published in ArcGIS online, that's where I would be able to bring it up from?
Well, probably not, because I don't think ArcGIS Online will publish their maps with a WMS service. That's one of so if you go to here under definitions, map providers, this is where you add your maps, your custom maps, and if I look at, I'm just going to bring up one example here. Hold on. So
you can show her mine with the soils map too.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. So we can bring up Greg's maps here, map providers. So here we see. So if I'm going to bring up, if you have an ArcGIS server, I'm going to show you that quickly. If you give me a second. I'm just going to bring that up here. Hold on. So this is how a service interface to a map to ArcGIS will look, and then you need to have this service available, WMS.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, then if you have an ArcGIS server, that is, or there are other products. There's GeoServer as well. But you need to have that particular service interface available, and that will that will give us enough information to load it into here. And then this is fiddly. How will this look? What kind of layers do I need? So and the boundaries and things. So just send us get in touch if you are uncertain about this, and I don't blame you for being uncertain about it, because it's a bit tricky.
Okay.
So what I want to say as well is, since we're on the topic, if you go under product mapping, and under there's here, if you're hosting the maps with us, but this applies to anybody. If you're going to prepare a map that's going to be on a WMS service, there is a few tips here on how to make the map look a bit nice. So because one thing to notice is that when it's online through a WMS, it is slightly different than when it just looks when you look at it inside ArcGIS. it's a bit, certain things are not displayed in the same way. So these tips that we have presented here can help you to create a nicer looking map for a WMS presentation. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, Greg, did you want to add anything?
Well, just show the soils layer there if you drop that down. So you could have a plant marked, and I have like different soil types mapped out. So I got that information from one of our county county providers that shows the different types of soils we have on the Arboretum property. So if I'm looking for a certain soil type, like I'm trying to avoid clay and I want it to be on loam, I can isolate locations where the soil type should be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
yeah, I'm looking really more for the mechanics of how to attach outside data and bring it into IrisBG.
Yeah. And that's a very good example, because what you see, if I go back to this this kind of service here, you can upload a map that has all kinds of layers with boundaries, with electric fencing or whatever, and then you see all these layers. You can be switched on and off. So when you set it up in Iris, you can tell which layers you want to display. So you can create one combination layer combination called My Garden for visitors or something, and another one. It's the same WMS service, but with different layer combinations.
I see.
So then when staff members want to use the map for one purpose, they pick, like what Greg said, you pick the soils map when you want to decide on where to plant stuff. And you could see also with Greg again, if you go here, they have one type of map here on their visitors website. But I believe on here you have one with the grids displaying out, don't you, Greg? Or maybe not.
Well, it's that when you zoom in, the grids appear at a certain level.
Yeah, this is an old one. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So that's.
So, in order to see if I have this service, we'll probably have to go to our
IT people,
IT people, and see whether or not they.
Yeah, just ask if you have a web map service that is hosted by Smith.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I see that. Yep. Sorry.
Once I get that web map service hosted by, how do I actually connect that to Iris? Once I have this.
Well, you have the service URL right there. You see listed. It would show the address of the server.
So all you do is attach the service URL. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
you just fiddle with the layers. Yeah, and the zoom levels and the bounds and things like that.
Yeah, and if you get into difficulties, you'll just get in touch with us, and we'll send us a link to the actual service. And then we can figure out for you how these details should be filled in. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And let's see if there's any other. We're running over time now, I see. So we should be respectful to people's schedule. But I'm just going to quickly see if there's any other questions. Greg, do you see any? I can't find my web page. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Oops. Let's see. There we go.
We sort of went over the code list types and code lists at the same time. So
I think we.
And we also listed how to add an asset to the funding. So I think we sort of covered those in basics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we are. I think we did. So that's good. So next webinar will be in August, on Thursday the 1st. So that's only 3 weeks from now. So that's very. Yep. And if you have any questions that you want us to discuss, or if you want to, I think we're sort of getting closer to have a full session on data import, I feel. That sort of seems to be sort of a recurring question, and requires a bit of in-depth kind of explanation, but let's see what happens. And if you have any questions that you want us to discuss, send an email to me or Greg or both of us, and then we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.